Hi, I'm Sarah of the team Aidan and Sara. I'm 87 years old, and Aidan is 16 going on 30.
Yes, and today we're talking about just kind of my opinions on how it feels a pending war and all the things that come with that, and whatever Sarah has to add to that as well. So I'm just gonna let you start, ask me whatever questions.
I remember going back, World War II, and I was only 3 and 4 years old and had a older brother and sister who liked to tease me, and I have a memory of blackout windows, and I'm standing in front of a window and the enemy are going to get me. That's what my brother and sister say to me if I move the curtain so much that the light shines out and the plane of the enemy sees that and shoots us. And I was screaming.
That's funny. For me, I think since I was born in like the middle of the war on terrorism, that there wasn't really like any notable or major conflict that I could really point out. But I remember always being afraid of ISIS. Like that was a huge thing. Like every time it was like
for me too.
it was like a buzzword. You would hear it and it would be like, oh, and that would make you scared. So I just always remember knowing what ISIS was, and every time someone says anything about ISIS, feeling like very uncomfortable as a kid. But I don't think I've ever really experienced any like degree of anything to do with a war or war stories, or really had anyone in my family that experienced a war. So my family hasn't really consisted of anyone that's really served, but ISIS was really big. I never realized it until recently as I got older that there was a lot of like anti-Muslim everything. Like I just remember a lot of adults around me like Muslim was always kind of like a bad thing to be, which obviously I don't agree with, but back then I always remember ISIS and Muslims and Arabs being kind of like things you heard, you'd be like, oh, okay, like this is serious, like serious conversation.
And I have a memory, and that's still fresh in my mind. My mother and her sister were fleeing the Muslims out of their country because they were Christians and the Muslims were in control. And I have an assortment of stories my mother told me, and that's for another time. And it makes me uneasy, but I don't feel that it's my war, but my mother's experience has a direct effect on me.
Yeah, definitely. I think adults have a greater impact on kids with their experience or what they say about other groups of people than they like to realize. Like, I don't know, I think adults understanding have like a grander view of the world for the most part compared to a kid, even like the most ignorant adults, that when they say things, they don't really realize how a kid picks up on that,
Effect on the kids.
Like, the handful of conversations, bringing it back to my experience of hearing ISIS, like the handful of things I heard about ISIS, whether it was like people being scared or people's little anecdotes on it, like I remember that a lot. They probably didn't think about it as much because, adults, they throw around things like war and nuclear destruction, and then they're just like, oh no, I'm going to work the next day. But a kid, that's what they think about. They hear that, and it's a lot more pressing than I think it is for adults sometimes.
Whereas I didn't realize the effect on children as much as the effect on adults, because I have certain viewpoints that I have to work on, and I really have to work on. And they're not pro anything. They're not anti anything. But it's my viewpoint, and I can't explain it to you, but it's my viewpoint.
Yeah, which honestly is very a noble thing to do these days, as I feel like it's easier for people to just assign with a party and their set of ideologies than to, have views of your own. I think my generation is getting a little better at not really falling into that, but then again, there's always the bad chickens in the batch for
Yes,
everybody.
But I think that your generation is more tolerant of different bad situations because they have not experienced longevity of whatever against that particular group. And I hope that you never experience that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. A lot of my generation, like what you said, I feel like we haven't really experienced firsthand a lot of like the tragedies and horrors of many things that happened, before we were born. And honestly, I can't help but just kind of think and expect, what's our great tragedy to overcome, as I think every generation has one. So I wonder how that will shape kind of our generation's role in history,
Yeah, and there are things that are coming up. The present administration is talking about war in so many words, and that is really something for me to wonder what is going to happen, because I have experienced negativity and horrors of different wars. I can remember going into New York on the train and on business and seeing young people lined up at the station being drafted and going to boot camp.
Right.
And it was not a pleasant sight.
And this was during Vietnam, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And really bad.
Yeah, I think it's very hard for young people right now to really understand what it means to be drafted into a war or to even fight a war. I think the United States have always been far removed from like the gravities of fighting another country, but I think my generation might be even more so, as like we've been living in a relatively like age of comfort for being American.
Yes.
Despite like we still have economic hardship, poverty, all these things, but generally most I think the average American experience for someone in my generation is not as horrible, you know, and whether that be for any reason, but I don't think that we've had anything to really make us understand what it means that, like, to be on a front line or to be ripped from your family and sent to a front line just for the fact that you're, you know, over the age of 18 and you're healthy to fight, you know?
And it's really not your war, but a old man's war
Yeah.
that got you into it. And that's the horrible thing about it concerning me. It's an old man's war. And how dare you send our next generation into combat and be maimed or killed when it's your war.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think it's very hard for even people that are not fighting to come to grips with the rationalization for fighting anymore. And I think that was something that even started after the Second World War, you know, like everything really started to stop making sense for conflicts after the First World War. Like, the people left that war just completely removed from any promises or any of the gains that you can get from war. And I think that that's still something that's never gone away. Like, I don't know too many people that really can give an honest or 100% agree with, like, any war we've been in for the last, like, probably a good 80, 90 years, you know? And I think that's a really raging sentiment in my generation. Like, I think we still carry a lot of the burdens that the Vietnam generation left with, not wanting to fight a war, not understanding the government, being pretty anti-establishment in terms of that stuff, but still, like, I don't know. It's easy to talk big, talk the talk, and when you have to walk it, it's a lot more difficult.
I second that opinion.
Yeah.
And today we have our president and Russia's premier who are warmongers, and they both of them want additional territory to prove their strength, and they're willing to give up youth and go to war.
Yeah, and yeah, it's scary because, like, I mean, I'm also scared of any escalation of war between the United States and a country directly, because we've never really had that experience. America's never faced any invasion or anything like that. So I wonder that effect on everybody would be.
Well, there are oceans between us and them, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's intercontinental missiles now, so.
Yes. Exactly. And we're right in the thick of it because we have more enemies today than we did yesterday.
Yeah, I can agree on that. It feels like every other day there's a new conflict or new talks of a conflict going on. And, you know, the connotations of war now is so much different than it was before. I feel like to convince someone in the 20th century to go to war was to convince them of, like, economic stability, you know, or to convince them that we could succeed in this war. To convince anyone now to go to war, you're literally putting into the hands of two countries the condition of the whole planet. You know, as soon as that nuclear silo opens up and sends one off, that's it, you know?
Done.
Yeah.
Done.
Because one comes, it's going to be followed by 50, 60,
Yes.
70. Yeah, and yeah, it's just a sad thing to think about, you know?
it pulls you into this morbid sense of existence,
Yeah.
and that knocks out ambitions to do whatever.
Yeah. It's just funny, is I've been reading on the First World War, and I've also been in this class, and a main part of the class that we've been talking about is kind of exploring the parallels of the lead up to World War One and today, and it's really strange because we see that the same sentiments of people back then, that feeling that there's like something in the air or there's something coming up, and that there's just dramatic technological advancements, and then increasing your war production and increasing all of this, and then escalating conflicts, is something that we're kind of looking at today. And there was this quote from a reading that we were assigned, and it was about a man post World War One returning back to the sites of the burials of all the soldiers, and he was looking at a grave, and all he could think is that looking at all these dead people makes you feel like sorry for being alive, you know. And I think that that's something we could feel today, a mix of that, a pending doom that we can't really place our finger on, but also familiarity and even making you feel like kind of small, because there's millions of men that have died before you and millions of people that face greater conflicts, but
And
you
we
still
haven't learned to listen.
right, and you still feel like there's something coming for you now too, you know.
Yeah.
It's scary, and I think as a young man, I fear that you know, issues today is gonna be issues for me tomorrow, you know. Like it's gonna be me and people my age having to deal with all this soon.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I can't see us not having to take the burden of today's decisions in the next 60 years. You know, I think that might be on us.
Would you think about going to another country, not fulfilling your obligations?
Oh, like going over country to go to war?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
Desertion.
Yeah, I would need a reason. Like I always say, and this is a thing that I've always said in classroom talking about any war. It's easy for American in 1940 to join the war against, or 1941 to join the war against Germany because they were an objective evil. You know, like there's nothing easier than trying to kill someone trying to kill other people. You know,
Right.
But I just can't see a conflict arising where it's like the American needs to go to this, or the French or the British need to go to this country because they're an objective evil. I just don't think that's something that I can foresee coming up, you know? And even beyond that, I don't think there's people out there today living within a society, even if it grows to be objective evil, that deserve death, you know? And it's not personal anymore. Like, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, all those conflicts, while there was technology and there was still mass bombing and all of that, there was still the personal element to it. But there's people sitting in trucks halfway across the country sending drones to blow people up. Like, I couldn't participate in that, especially someone that's innocent but just working for their country, you know?
Good for you.
Yeah.
Hold on to that.
And it's really easy to be an American sometimes because we don't get pulled into the, like, for instance, a Ukrainian man. Like, you know, a Ukrainian man has no option. Like, their country is being attacked. There's people in their country.
Right.
Americans, we get to decide if we want to go to war because there's no one at our oceans, you know? There's no one on our borders. So it's a little bit privileged.
Nuclear.
Right, which is always the issue for everybody. Because if someone bombs us and we bomb them back, or another country bombs or whatever, it's nuclear winter for the whole planet. We're all gonna go very hungry.
No holds barred.
Yeah, exactly. Scary thoughts, but I don't know. I think there could be a silver lining in it, but I don't think we're gonna see any progress without being reminded of what it means to fight, you know?
I hope so, but I think that we have short memories.
Yeah, I think every generation forgets the
effects.
Exactly. You know, it's unfortunate, but you know, the good times are created by bad times, and then those good times create bad times. It's unfortunately a cycle, but and then it gets even worse. I could go on this forever, but it gets even worse now that it's becoming very popular to kind of reject a lot of like humanities aspects of education, and that's a whole nother conversation, but it's hard for anyone to even know or to learn anything if they're not even reading about it.
True.
Yeah.
So true. Education is so important in many respects, and this is one to look back and be able to understand the effects of war or anything against humanity.
Yeah. Math isn't all that is out there, guys, I promise. It's good, you know, math pays the bills, but it's your right as a citizen of any country to understand what's going on, you know?
How can your generation, stop the talking or eliminate the possibility of war? How can your generation do that?
That's a heavy question. I'm not too sure, but what I am sure of is there's a prolific black activist in the 20s, or honestly, I think it might have been a little later than that, but named W.E. Du Bois, and he had this really strong belief in that the vast majority of, you know, African Americans won't step up as long as there's, you know, segregation or violence, but it takes that small percentage to lead that vast percentage towards a common goal. And I think that I don't know if my generation as a whole can do it, but there's definitely that small percentage, I think, that's lying in the shadows right now that will probably come to be,
really,
you know, leaders. Maybe not. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but I think we're losing the element of a leader in my generation and even millennials. I don't know if we even have anybody that we can, you know, as comparable as like Martin Luther King or a president, or pick any leader. I don't know if we have an equivalent for that, but I think maybe there one day will be, and I think it's up to that small percentage of my generation to make make the strides and make the changes. But
interesting.
Yeah, he was an
hold on to that belief.
Yeah,
because it could be you.
Maybe the next president of the United States. Vote Rodriguez 2060. It's coming soon.
Oh God, who picked this subject?
I think, was it you today?
Right.
Feeling existentially challenged.
Oh God, it's frustrating when you understand the implications of getting into a warlike stance and it escalating into a war. Mm-hmm. And so many people, innocent people, are in the line of fire. It's not the wealthy and who hide. That's a remarkable statement that I just made, and I got that in me, and it was bubbling into the surface. And so much is wrong about war.
Yeah, and I fear that the trajectory that not just our country or countries overseas are going to, but most countries are heading into is like this very aggressive stance, and it's really strange because there's so much things going on that are kind of rhyming with what happened in the past, but
Yes.
it's different in a way. Like to cherry pick an example, the United States prior to World War One had wanted no involvement in the world stage.
Isolations.
Exactly, isolationist theory, and then but now after what was it 100 years or actually I think World War
They forget.
yeah and but weirdly enough we're trying to go back to that isolationist style. We're trying to remove from our troops, remove from countries, remove our funding, and it's weird because it's like how do we make that jump? And I don't know. It's something you could really put your finger on or explain, but it's interesting how we're still following that circle.
Pattern.
Yes, that pattern.
How can we break that pattern through what and how?
That's an answer for I don't think I have yet. I think that's the answer that everyone's trying to answer right now, or the question everyone's trying to answer.
You divide up the United States, and what, in your opinion, is the segment of the country that has nothing to do with war and is committed to staying out of war, and then there's another segment of the country that leaning towards war. Why? What and why are there two segments?
Honestly, in my opinion, I see it differently. I think both parties are how do I put this? I think both parties like to promote that they're anti-war, but I don't think anyone's really ever anti-war.
Really?
Yeah, I think whether if you choose blue or red, it's whatever they want to tell you. Like, I don't think Republicans today are sitting here actively thinking, I want to go to war. But I do think that both Democrats and Republicans have ways that they want to see the world working, and they both have ways that they want to see our relationship with different countries, whether that is writing checks or whether that's completely withdrawing and seeking some sort of assurance of what you're doing. I don't know. I think I see kind of like being anti-war as something that's really, really hard to be. Like, I think a lot of people say it, and every politician says it. I don't think anyone's actively trying to say that they are for or against, but I think also that politicians and people in general are taught to hide their hand. I think you take anyone today and put in front of them the threat of war, I can't see that they're in the face of that, just, oh, I'm anti-war, stepping back, like, I think both sides have their own ways. How do I try to formulate this? I don't know. I see.
Take it down to the human, one person facing the existence of war.
I think every single person today, in the light of our 50 years of having no really pressing, actually in our history, never having to face the bare brutality of war or destruction of your own country, and even mixing into that are conflicts around the nation that's radicalized a lot of people, whether you choose Iraq or Vietnam or anything. I think a politician or a person has to try to balance that sentiment of being anti-war, seeing the casualties of that, while also balancing it, never having to experience the devastation of war personally, while also
experience.
Exactly, while also trying to balance the what was I gonna say? I just lost it on my ear. What was I gonna say? Oh, also try to balance the self-created notion that we have a role in the world to prevent things, you know, that we're the face of democracy and all of that.
Stop right there. What do you think our role in this world is as a country?
Oh man, I don't. You're asking me deep questions. I don't think I've ever kind of tried to put an answer to yet.
Another time.
Yeah, I think I can answer in context of a situation, but I don't think I can have a blanket statement. I don't think there's really is a slogan for any country that to really follow, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
That's what I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's a big...
It's too much context that's needed, you know?
How are we pressed for time?
We're at half an hour.
We'll be back on this subject because it is one that can happen.
Yeah. Maybe this, we'll look back at this and see it as extremely prophetic or maybe extremely pathetic because we were just moping around over here and nothing ends up happening. But yeah, definitely would like to come back to this topic. And if any of you guys have anything you'd like to add or question in specific, we are always happy to answer.
Please.
We are uncensored people. Take that how you will. Might be a bad thing, but yeah, thank you for tuning in on this episode for today.
Thank you.
See you guys in the next one.